Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Today we're going to start off with lecture number 22. It's about distribution. We're going to continue with chapter number 12, but before we get on to today's lecture, let's quickly review what we did in the previous class. So we started off with supply chain. We started off with the concept of upstream and downstream partners. So upstream partners are all those partners that provide you with raw material. So your suppliers are essentially your upstream partners. On the other hand, you have downstream partners. Downstream partners include your marketing channels, your distribution channels, your wholesalers, your retailers. So all these channels fall under downstream partners. Now we talked about supply chain. Supply chain, we talked about how it is a view that takes into account make and sell view, right? So you make the product and you try to sell it to the customer, rather than understanding the need of the customer and then providing the customer what he needs. So it is a more outdated form of marketing, the supply chain. Then we talked about how the concept has evolved and has come now in as demand chain, which takes into account sense and response. So you sense what is happening new into the market, you see what's new, you see the changing trends, what is the competitor offering, what is the new technology that is coming up, you sense all that and you respond accordingly. So that is a demand chain view of the supply chain. Then we talked about how a more advanced and a more improved version of demand chain is a value delivery network that takes into account the fact that every step adds value to the product, and your value delivery network essentially comprises of your suppliers, distributors, and ultimately customers who partner with each other to improve the performance of the system. We saw if one of the element of your value delivery network sort of does not work properly, how all your value delivery network seems to fail. So let's say the retailer is not interacting well with the customer. That essentially means that the customer would not have good experience with the company, as a result of which he would not make a repurchase of the product. Resultantly, the profits would go down and the company would suffer. So only one element of the value delivery network did not work properly, did not work efficiently, as a result of which all of the delivery network elements had to suffer. So any element acting out could affect all the value delivery network. Then we talked about intermediaries. Intermediaries offer greater efficiency within your network, within your value delivery network. We talked about how there are different contact points that are maintained within a value delivery network, and if you have intermediaries within your system, the number of contact points reduces, as a result of which there's less hodgepodge in your system. There's less things that are to be managed on the company's end. So things sort of streamline if you have intermediaries within the system, but provided the type of environment that you're working in, the type of product that you're dealing with. So that essentially decides if you want to have an intermediary in your system or not. So we talked about how companies create narrow assortment of products and how customer require wide assortment of products. So we talked about how your grocery baskets have range of products, whereas the company creates limited number of products. And what brings these two different types of assortments together is your retailer, your wholesaler, your intermediaries, right? So that is a more economic view of intermediaries. Now this is how the contact points were arranged. Then we talked about how channel members add value. They provide you with information about the market, they can promote the product, they can be a useful point of contact with the customer, with the market. Then we talked about how they match the needs of both the company and the customer. We just talked about how you produce different assortments, and the assortment required by the company is by the customer is different. So it sort of matches the assortments. Then we talked about negotiations that are done. Then we talked about physical distribution, that is essentially one of the tasks of your intermediaries. Then we talked about financing, how it could give credit to the customer. They could buy the product on the credit, as a result of which they might be encouraged to buy the product. So imagine a situation, you got a new job and you need to buy yourself a new car. If financing is available, you might be able to afford it, as a person who just took up job. But if the financing wouldn't have been available or is not available, then you might have to save for quite some time and then be able to make the purchase. That might discourage you in making the purchase. So it sort of eases the process on the end of the consumer and also helps make profit for the company and wholesaler and retailer. Then we talked about risk taking. Of course, if somebody gives you a shelf space, that essentially means they're taking the risk of producing the product. Then we talked about 1 level, 2 level channels, and then there was a direct channel. A direct channel is a channel that has essentially no intermediaries, and a 1 level channel has 1 intermediary, and on the other hand 2 level channel has 2 intermediaries. And then this is what happens within these systems, what sort of flows take place. So there's a physical flow of product. The product actually flows from the producer to the end consumer. Then there's a flow of ownership. The product might be bought by the wholesaler, as a result of which he becomes a merchant. Who's a merchant? Who is a merchant? Did we do that in the last class? Who is a merchant?
Somebody who buys and sells products.
Very good. So somebody who buys the product becomes the owner, and as a result of which he resells the product on a profit. He is a merchant. On the other hand, agent is? Agent or broker is somebody who does not take ownership of the product. So he does not own the title of the product. He does not buy the product. He just acts as a middleman. So that's the difference. So flow of ownership takes place. Then payment flow takes place, informational flow and promotional flow. Then we talked about marketing channel. Marketing channel is essentially your downstream channel. That is your distributors, your wholesalers and retailers. Then we talked about how channel conflict may occur. There could be vertical conflict, there may be horizontal conflict in between the channel. So vertical conflict might mean that the retailer is not making enough profit, he's complaining to the wholesaler, wholesaler is not being given proper margins, he's complaining to the manufacturer, so that is a vertical conflict. Horizontal conflict could be between different licenses that have been issued. The companies at the same level, the partners at the same level might have a disagreement with each other. For instance, you have 2 suppliers for a single product, they might be in conflict with each other over a number of things, delivery time, the payments being made, the profit margins, so it could be anything. Then we talked about different types of distribution systems. We talked about conventional system. Conventional system was a system whereby you had every element in the value delivery network, your suppliers, your wholesalers, your retail, they try to maximize their profit rather than taking a more holistic approach towards distribution system whereby everyone tries to work together in delivering a superior value to the customer. So that is a more conventional form of distribution system. Then we talked about vertical marketing system that provides channel leadership, consists of producers, wholesaler, retailer acting as a unified system. So the first one was corporate marketing system. Now what happens in corporate marketing system? This is a distribution system where there's an ownership of a firm. They manage everything from top to bottom, right? So that essentially unifies the system. Since they own pretty much everything from the producer to the retail store to the whole warehousing to all the facilities that are being provided, so they have complete control over the system. So that is one of the vertical marketing system. Then we talked about contractual vertical marketing system consists of independent firms who are joined together by contract. And that contract actually serves as a unifying agent. The contract helps you resolve the problems. The contract lays down everything, all the terms and conditions, as a result of which they're able to work more cohesively and in a more unified fashion. The third one, franchising organizations are actually contractual vertical marketing systems. Then administered vertical marketing system. Administered vertical marketing system takes into account that there's no one single firm that is running everything from top to bottom. But what happens here is that there's one firm that is, as a result of its size, as a result of its power, has a more dominating effect over all the other firms that are within that system. And that firm usually governs everything that is happening within that system. So companies, giants like Nestle, giants like Procter & Gamble, Unilever, these are all big, huge companies. Yeah, everybody wants to work with such companies, wholesaler, retailers, because there's a good profit that comes out of their product. So whatever decision that they take, whatever direction they want to steer the business in, the distribution network tends to agree with them because of their size, because of their power. And that is administered vertical marketing system. Now let's get to today's lecture. We talked about a vertical marketing system. Let's talk about horizontal marketing system. Horizontal essentially means the firms working at the same level. So how could firms working at the same level, sort of work together in creating superior value? So horizontal marketing systems are when two or more companies at one level join together to follow a new marketing opportunity. So when two firms would come together, they would think that they can work together well, and they join hands to sort of launch and work in their own interest. That is horizontal marketing system. Here you see a picture of Sinopec and McDonald's CEOs. Sinopec is one of the largest gasoline distributors in China. Right? They have gas stations all over. Maybe I think the number was 31,000 that was mentioned in your book. So 31,000 gas stations they have in China. McDonald's made an agreement with Sinopec that they would open restaurants or McDonald's points in every gasoline station of theirs, right? As a result of which, what would happen? McDonald's would make profit, 31,000 contact points with the customer, huge profit potential. That's the gain of McDonald's. And on the other hand, Sinopec, what would be the benefit for Sinopec? More customer inflow. So anybody who is hungry, they would tend to stop by at Sinopec, and they might want to refuel there, right? So that is benefit for Sinopec. So both the companies have have joined together to sort of pursue their interests and have found an opportunity to work together. So these are two firms at the same level working together for their benefit. That is a horizontal marketing system. So companies combine financial, production or marketing resources to accomplish more than one company could do alone. So that is a horizontal marketing system. Questions so far? Right. So it's not necessary that you follow single marketing system or single way of distributing your product. You can go for a direct marketing channel. You could have an indirect marketing channel at the very same time as well. So many companies, actually majority of the companies, work with a combination of direct marketing channel, one level or two level channel. So that is a multi-channel distribution system, or hybrid marketing channels are when a single firm sets up 2 or more marketing channels to reach 1 or more marketing segments. So for instance, you're a clothing company, you make clothes, you sell it to everyone, right? Now there are people who do know internet, who know how to use it, how to place orders, and there are people who do not know how to place orders. Now these are 2 very different segments, right? How would you cater to those who do not want to go to store, who are very busy, and who know the internet, right? So you would want to go for a direct channel for those particular customers. On the other hand, there are people who are not that educated but have enough money in their pockets to afford your products, and they like to go to stores, they have time to go to stores, so you could open 1 level channel for them, or maybe 2 level channel for them, right? So that is multiple or hybrid distribution network, right? So Khadi does it, Gulama does it. Okay. So what does Gulama do? You can place the orders directly on their website and get the product. You can go through their stores and get the product, and you can go for the 2 level channels where they have wholesalers, retailers, and then end customers. So they use multiple channels to distribute their products. So that is a multi-channel distribution system. And the new trend is disintermediation. Now disintermediation is a term whereby you would want to end or sort of eliminate the intermediaries within your system. Right? So that is disintermediation. Disintermediation occurs when product or service producers cut out intermediaries and go directly to final buyers. This has, this is the result of technology. This is the result of internet. You have websites, people go place orders, get the product directly. So this is disintermediation that has sort of radicalized your, improved your delivery network in many ways. So it's a opportunity for a lot of companies. It is a threat for a lot of companies. For instance, in the previous times, if you had to rent a movie, you had to go to a store and get the movie, right? So this was very common. You go to a brick and mortar store. Brick and mortar store is a physical store, right? So you go to a physical store and get the movie. That was the only option at that point in time. We're talking about 90s, right? Now the things have changed. You could go to the internet, you could go to Netflix, pay their monthly payments and get the movie, right? Sitting at home. So the concept of brick and mortar store for movie rentals has practically ended, right? It is now vanished. So this was as a result of disintermediation, right? So this is a threat for brick and mortar store. If they do not, come up with new strategies to deal with this changing technology, they might go obsolete, and as a result of which they would go out of business. For companies like Blockbuster, which were essentially brick and mortar store, physical distribution store of movie rentals, they've now gone online, and now you could go on their website and rent a movie from there. So they realized that disintermediation is going to happen and people would not go to physical stores anymore. They realized this opportunity, went online, took their system online, and they're pretty much in business at the moment. So you need to see what is happening in your environment, stay relevant to the environment, see the changing trends, and make sure you keep abreast with the changing trends. Now there's an example given here of Black & Decker. So what happens is that what companies do is all the companies could go online and start selling the products online. But would this work well with their other partners in their distribution network? Would they be happy? The wholesalers and retailers, they might get offended by the fact that you're selling the products online and sort of taking away their profit. They might be offended. As a result of which, they might stop placing your products on their shelves in their stores. So how could you deal with this problem? Now Black & Decker, what Black & Decker does is, you could go to Black & Decker's website, you can see the products there, learn their features, and then when you want to buy the product, it logs you on to other members of the distribution network, and from there on you could purchase the product. So they might lead you towards, if you want to buy yourself a toaster for your house, they might lead you towards the website of Target, or let's say Walmart, or any other store that carries their products, and from there on you could order the product. So in this way, Walmart is making profit, Black & Decker is making profit, and nobody's getting offended, right? So this is how you sort of deal with this intermediation. Questions so far? Now this is channel design decisions. What sort of channel design decisions you want to take when you are designing the channel for your particular company. Now the first in that is analyzing consumer needs. Now you need to find out what your consumer wants. Now essentially consumer would want very quick service, fastest delivery, greatest assortment of products, all these from Rolls-Royce to a pack of salt on a single website. This is what consumer would want ideally, right? And fastest delivery, I click order and the product should be on my doorstep. This is what customer would essentially want. But can you do that? That's the question. That's the question where the company needs to assess their resources, their ability. So firstly you analyze what the customer wants, and then you balance it out with what you can do. So what sort of, given your distribution network, how early can you deliver the product? How can you minimize the cost of product delivery? What range of assortment of product can you offer? So this is a question that the marketer needs to answer. So you need to choose a segment that you can serve. You can obviously not serve everybody. You need to select the channel of distribution that works for you the best, or you could afford, or your resources allow you to use, and then you need to minimize the cost of customers, reaching out to the customer so that you could deliver the product more efficiently and inexpensive. This is the first part about channel design decisions. Firstly, you need to analyze what the customer wants and manage with, balance it out with the resources that you have. The second element is setting channel objectives. Now, as I said, you could aim very ambitiously and say that I could deliver the product then and there as you click order. But can you actually do that? You might not be able to, or you actually are not able to, right? So you need to set your channel objectives. How do you set your channel objectives? Once you've selected your target market, based on that target market you select a level of service that you can provide. Right? So if you're charging a lot of money, that means the level of service needs to be adequately high. Right? If you're not charging that amount of money, the people would be okay if you, you're not that quick, or you're not, the speed of delivery is not that great, right? Because they're not paying a lot of money. They're okay with you being a little, slow maybe. So you need to identify your channel, who the customer is and what sort of targeted level of service according to that particular target market you could give at a minimum cost, right? So that's the first aspect of setting channel objectives. Other than that, you need to see the resources that you have upon which you would set your channel objectives. And the third most important factor is the environment that you're working in. So environment has a huge impact on your channel objectives, right? So the laws and regulations of that particular area, that would affect the how you would set your channel objectives. The overall environment would affect, the economic environment would affect, right? So if the per capita income is high, you could charge high prices. If the per capita income is low, or the targeted customer cannot afford to pay that much of money, then you need to keep things accordingly. So you need to set the channel objectives based on the economic environment that is there, the legal environment that is there, the laws and regulations of the land that are there. So that's about setting channel objectives. Then talking about types of intermediaries, these are a few major decisions that you need to take when you're identifying, when you're designing your channel. The first one is types of intermediaries that might be in your system. So you could have a direct channel omitting all the intermediaries, probably works for you. That could be one way of designing your marketing channel. For instance, Dell did it for quite a long period of time. They did not have any intermediary. You had to place the order directly on their website and get the product, right? So they didn't have the brick and mortar stores, they didn't have any resellers, they didn't have any wholesalers in their system for quite a while. So that was Dell, right? That was Dell operating under direct channel. After a few years, or after a couple of years, they realized that the companies like HP and Apple, they're reaching out to the customer using resellers, using wholesalers, and as a result of which they're making significant profit, and they might sort of lag behind if they don't enter the market with these particular intermediaries. So they added value, adding resellers into their systems. So who are value added resellers? Who are value added resellers? Very good. So anybody who adds a value to the original product produced by the customer, he's a value added reseller, right? So they sort of augment the product. So maybe if they're getting Dell laptops, they might include software that is relevant to that particular area. That could augment the product. So that is value addition within a product. So they added value added resellers into their system, and that's how they now deliver the product. So you need to select how many intermediaries do you want to include in your system, and what type of intermediary you want to include in your system. Once you've made that decision, you also need to see the number of marketing intermediaries. So number of marketing intermediaries depends upon your market coverage. What is the breadth and width of the market that you would want to cover. So there are 3 levels of market coverage. The first level is intensive distribution. Intensive distribution is a type of distribution in which so intensive distribution is the type of distribution whereby you try to place your product on every possible shelf that you can, right? So for your FMCGs, you would want to place the product in pretty much every shelf that you can. So whether it's your cafe, or whether it is the Ramri, whether it is Metro Cash and Carry, whether it is Carrefour, so you would want to place your product on every possible shelf that you could possibly place your product on. The second type of distribution is exclusive distribution, complete opposite of intensive distribution, whereby you place the product very selectively because you want to maintain an image of luxury, an image of exclusiveness in your product. So if your product is available everywhere, that essentially means your product is not that exclusive, right? So if the product is exclusive, if the product is luxury, it needs to be treated like so. Now then how would you place the luxury products? You would go for exclusive distribution, whereby you would pick stores that signify luxury, right? So you would not place the products everywhere, only in the expensive stores. So if your product is expensive, maybe which store carries expensive products? Any examples?
Maybe the malls.
Okay, maybe the malls. Anybody else? Harrods is a very good example. It carries a lot of luxury brands in it, right? So you could place your product, if it's a luxury, you could place the product over there. If it's, let's say, in Islamabad, where would you want to place a luxury product? Centaurus? Is there a place to place a luxury product in here in Islamabad? Can you think of any? Is there a place? So you create one. That's a marketing opportunity. Right? That's a business opportunity. Create a place where you could place the luxury products. Talk out loud. Then the last one is selective distribution. Selective distribution is in between intensive distribution and exclusive distribution. Now you don't want to place the product on every shelf, and then you don't want to place the products exclusively as well. So what happens in selective distribution is you pick and choose the stores that you would want to place the product. So product would be easily available, but not, as easily available as in intensive distribution. So your laptop wouldn't be as easily available as, a pack of biscuits maybe, right? So you could not get pack of biscuits from here at your cafe, but you could not get a laptop from your cafe, right? So that essentially means it is somewhere in between exclusive and intensive distribution, right in the middle. So that is selective distribution. So your home appliances, laptops, all these sort of products go for selective distribution. So intensive distributions are your FMCGs. Exclusive distribution takes into account luxury automobile, prestige clothing, designer clothes. So these are all exclusive distribution items, and then you have selective distribution that we just mentioned. Then we talk about evaluating the major alternatives. So when you are selecting different channel designs, you need to evaluate those channel designs on three things. The first thing is the economic criteria, right? So economic criteria is the cost and benefit that you get, right? How costly it's going to be, and what benefit that you get out of that intermediary being in your system, right? So that is the economic criteria. On the other hand, control issues is a serious problem when it comes to having intermediaries within your system. So every time you add an intermediary, you lose some control over your organization, right? Because essentially you have added a third partner in your value delivery network, and he might have his own objectives, he might have his own profit goals, he might have his own way of looking at things and serving customer, right? So you lose control of your business when you add intermediaries. So how willing are you to control, and how much control are you ready to lose? That is another question that you would want to answer. And lastly, the adaptive criteria. Adaptive criteria is you need to see your long-term goals, right? So that is adaptive criteria. So if you're adding an intermediary, what effect would it have on your long-term goals, profit goals, or growth goals, or any other goal that you might have? So adaptive criteria is can your current addition adapt to the goals that you have set for your long-term period. So that is adaptive criteria. Questions so far? Adaptability criteria. Right? Now, designing international distribution channel systems can vary from country to country. Of course, as we talked about, the economic environment may be different. That varies, you know, your channel design, the type of audience that you're catering to. That would change with country to country. So you need to alter your design. So, you know, for instance, if your company has been working around the globe, it has been using direct channel of distribution, and the company finally decides to go to Afghanistan for some reason. Now, the people there might not have access to the internet at the very first place, right? And the people might not be educated enough to, you know, operate a computer and sort of place the order. So you might want to change your channel design when you're entering countries like that. So your channel design needs to be altered and needs to be sort of adjusted to every country's need, and must be able, the second point, must be able to adapt channel strategies to the existing structure within each country. So you need to adapt to each country's requirements, the legal requirements, the maybe social requirements. So different types of requirements are there for each land, and you need to adapt your channel design according to that land. We'll keep it here for today. We're going to continue in the next class.